Yeah. So it's all very serious. Yeah. The posterity, all the fantastic ideas.
I did not know.
Awesome. Yeah. So we're gonna kick off our Women in Gaming panel now. So I guess the first thing we'll do is give all our panelists a chance to introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about what they do and kind of the road they've been on to get here. So I guess we'll start with Morgan.
Do I press a button or is it all?
No.
Okay. Hello, my name is Morgan. I'm known as Juxto on all social medias. I've been streaming for about 5 years, gaming since I was able to hold a controller. I'm recently working with Logitech. I've been doing a lot of adverts. You might have seen it on Facebook. Ignore the hate comments. I'm not what they say. Trust me. I've worked with Razer before. I've worked with many PC companies such as Felce. I'm currently working with the UK's leading eSports organisation called Vexed. They've got one of the best CSGO teams in the UK at the moment, so you might have seen it. Yeah, that's it basically.
Hi, I'm Gina. I work for Big Pixel Studios as their operations manager, and I guess that entails everything apart from making the game. So kind of, they call me kind of the head of happiness, so kind of culture, recruitment, everything that kind of makes a studio tick is kind of what I do. I'm quite new to the industry, been in it for 2.5 years, previously at Rovio for 2 months, before getting made redundant, and I don't think that was my fault. And then previously background in costume and fashion and retail. Kind of got into the industry through Gumtree actually, but that's a different story. But forget that, I'll pass on to Riana.
Hi, I'm Riana McKeith, and I'm an art director working in King London Studios. Currently the art director of Candy Crush Friends Saga, so I'm one of those developers. I've been working in the games industry for about 10 years now, as an art lead, an art director and studio art director in various different companies. Before that, I worked in animation, so a background in animation, mostly in Ireland. I got my start when I got made redundant for the first time. Unfortunately, a pattern in the games industry, you might find you get made redundant quite often. So I saw an advertisement in a company called PopCap, which you may or may not know, make Plants vs. Zombies and Bejeweled, and that sort of thing. Took the plunge and started working in games. I'd always loved games from when I was a child, more like yourself. I'd just been playing computer games since before our computer had a Windows operating system. It was mostly on DOS at that point. So that's going to give you a sense of my age. So I got started in PopCap Games, working there in Dublin. Got made redundant for the second time and made the move to Berlin, where I started working in another company called Wuga, who also makes casual mobile games. It's a bit of a pattern, right? Then, after about 5 years, I took a really exciting opportunity to open a brand new studio in London for Rovio.
You know how that works.
So, yeah, spoiler alert. Story's already been spoiled. So I joined that company to start a brand new studio as one of the studio art directors, part of the leadership team there. And we hired Gina. Fortunately, hired her just before we all got made redundant. So 9 months later, I found myself looking for a new job and took a role in King. So that's kind of been my journey towards working here in the London games industry.
Brilliant. So thought a nice kind of way to kind of frame your experience in the gaming industry as well would be to talk about your maybe your proudest achievement, anything you're really glad you've worked on. It's a really good example of gaming industry and sort of work you've done as well.
I remember you sent these questions to us in advance, and I sat down and think, oh my God, how am I going to choose one thing? So I'm not going to, because it's impossible. I think my whole career has been sort of many moments that I'm proud of. I think things that stood out for me, it was the first time I saw someone on the tube playing my game, and I was like, oh. It's sort of like, can I go and tell them that I made that? No is the answer. That goes badly. They look very confused. Why are you talking to me? But I made. So that just seeing someone enjoy my game for the first time, knowing that they were looking at my artwork, seeing the reviews. So the very first game that I published that I was kind of the art lead on was a Bejeweled game, Bejeweled on iOS. And you could see the moment it went on the App Store and the reviews started coming in and they were 5 stars. I was like, oh my God, this is why I got into the industry. I love it so much, that feeling that you're making something that people love, that brings joy into their lives. And that's something you were a part of. So after that, I think there was loads of moments. I made lots of games. I worked on lots of things. They all got published. It was great. But I started to realize that the things that really made me fulfilled in games hadn't just been making games anymore. I was an art director, so I had a team of people working for me. So it became finding interesting young talent, mentoring them, seeing them grow and develop, seeing an artist I had hired become an art lead was just this defining moment. And I think that's kind of shifted for me now. So a lot of what makes me really proud is being able to open the industry now to even more people.
Cool, that kind of relates to my proudest achievement. So I joined the industry because ultimately I really liked working with people and I just couldn't find the industry that I could connect with those kind of people. And I kind of fell into the games industry and met a lot of like-minded people. My proudest achievement, so a bit backstory, Big Pixel Studios. We make the Rick and Morty mobile games. We made Pocket Mortys, currently working on new Rick and Morty mobile titles. So we were acquired by Adult Swim in 2018, which is when I joined, and there were 5 of us. Now there's 40, so rapid expansion, which I kind of spearheaded. And last year we won the Best Place to Work awards in the UK games industry, which was really cool, considering that we were relatively new. And it was just really cool hearing about all these new employees and what they really liked about this really new studio and how they felt that they had a say. And it's just really great that I work with like so many passionate people that really want to make kind of a difference in the industry and that they want to stick around and they want to kind of just, they don't not only want to make games, they want to like the people they work with, which is refreshing, and they want to just, they're really proud of their company, and that kind of like then just trickles down to like the product, and it's just, I just love it.
Thanks. So I joined the industry probably around about 5-6 years ago doing streaming, and I was doing games development at college. Figured that it wasn't for me, and my tutor said to me, "Oh, you're really funny, you should go on Twitch, you're a girl, everybody will watch you." For about 2 years I got about 4 viewers. I was really bad, and then I kicked off working with Razer. They gave me a few tips and then I kind of moved forward from there. My proudest achievement is probably really recently. In 2019 I did an advert for the G502 mouse for Logitech. But it got bundled, absolutely bombarded with hate, and it was all just because they were like, oh, women. They were just so angry, and it was insane, and Logitech couldn't believe it, and they said, right, that's it, we're making another video, basically saying, like, why are women getting so much hate? And that came out on Sunday, and it was really cool seeing my face on a Logitech thing with such an important issue, like, why should we get hate just because of us being women? It makes no sense to me, and it's something that I, think about a lot, and I want to push forward into the community, is that we shouldn't be treated differently. We like playing video games and like sitting in our pajamas for days on end, not showering, playing RPGs, okay? Just like everyone else. Same. So I think, it's a really important issue to break that stereotype, and that was probably my proudest achievement, and it made me cry. I was like, oh my God, I did something that I believed so much in, and my parents were really proud, and it was amazing. It was so good.
It's really cool that they supported you in that rather than like,
Yeah.
I almost in my head thought, your story, like, oh, and they replaced you with a man. And then
No. And I think what's really good is the woman, my contact in Logitech, is also another woman, and she's called Anne-Marie, and she's just so amazing, and she was really shocked by the amount of hate it got, and even she said, well, we're going to work with you more now. So I was like, thanks, everyone.
experiences in the industry, both kind of within companies and then in any public-facing work you or any work you've been involved in, have been facing, how those things align, what you expect, kind of what someone going into the industry might initially think, and then how it actually kind of turns out.
I think when I first went into streaming and when I first started, I thought, it's going to be great. I'm just going to sit there and I'm going to play games. Loads of people are going to watch because I'm a girl, and it didn't happen. No one watched for ages. And then, but when I finally did start picking up and I started getting viewers and I started working with companies, it was something that I did just have to get used to. Is there was going to be loads of hate, and there's nothing you can do about it, nothing that you can say. It's just the way that things are. Deal with it. And I think only recently I've really been like, actually, no, I don't have to deal with this at all. I'll start, making a stand for it. So, and I think a lot of people go into streaming that are, women think that it will be easy because it's an easy moneymaker. People will watch you because you're female, but no one really does talk about how much hate and how much harassment you do get. And I think people do need to talk out about it more in the streaming because it's just not spoken about, and I think that's wrong. Everyone else would speak about it anywhere else. It's just kind of normal and accepted, and that's not the way it should be.
I was quite naive going into the industry. I think working in a head office at retail where there was maybe about 5 men, so I was not a minority, and then going into an industry where it's only really in my current studio, because at Rovio it was quite a good balance, but that's because we were pretty small.
Very few of us.
Yeah. So it felt quite weird to feel like a minority for gender, definitely. And I don't know. I guess because I was quite naive about it. I don't really have any negative. For me, I didn't have a negative impact on me. Maybe because I was in a leadership position as well. I thought I could do something about it. So as I was helping grow Big Pixel, it was definitely something I had in mind, that I wanted to hire as diversely as possible, and the companies that we were working with were aligned with that as well. So I made sure that we had recruitment agencies that would be showing us diverse candidates and making sure that we were equally represented across it when we got CVs as well. So it was when we received them, managers weren't just seeing loads of dudes applying for developer roles. We were trying to get an equal representation. So yeah, sorry, I kind of went off a tangent there. But
Yeah, to echo, I think, what you were all saying, I was incredibly naive when I joined the games industry, but this was, I think, 12 years ago. But I was naive in general. I had been incredibly lucky when I was growing up. My mum is a computer scientist. She has a PhD in chemistry. My dad has a PhD in physics and worked in a university. And I was surrounded by sort of very diverse and welcoming and inclusive community. I felt equal. I felt that I was treated equally. In my school is non-gendered, and we all went to physics, and there was women in the physics class, and I went to maths, and there was women in the maths class, and I never thought that people would judge me based on being a woman. And I was thinking, well, what's the problem? I said, why do we still need feminism? What's going on? And then I actually went out working. And I think I was, even with that, I was incredibly lucky. Like, I compare my journey and how many opportunities I've got, and how much I've been supported by my managers, been supported by the places I've worked, how inclusive they wanted to be, and how diverse they wanted to be. And still, there were things that happened that really upset and damaged me and hurt my career, even within places that genuinely trying to be ahead of the curve in how we thought about games. Mobile games really do genuinely, I think, more than nearly any of the other games industries, seem to be at the kind of forefront of really trying to change that. And I think it's because the audiences tended to be more diverse and more inclusive. So they're trying to be this in the workplace as well. So I'm going to tell you a couple of stories. Please bear in mind that the vast majority of my working life has been brilliant, but there are things you have to be wary of. So I'm going to tell you a couple of examples. The first one was after I've been working in PopCap for 2 or 3 years, and we got made redundant. And one of my ex-colleagues had been started working in another company, and I told some friends from my company, oh, there's a job opening in that company, and I might apply. And the look on their faces changed. So what's going? I was like, oh, you can't apply there. I was like, what? Why not? I was like, oh, you know our colleague who's there? Yeah, he doesn't like you very much. I was like, what? He said, when he had been working in PopCap, he had talked about me behind my back a lot, and about how I'd only got my job because I was a woman, and incredibly sexist things about the way I looked. And he was a manager, and he was telling it to his whole team. And I never even worked with him, and that I was bad at my job, and all these sorts of things. And he'd been saying this for years, and no one had told me. And it was only when I was going to apply to work in his company that people just finally were like, we can't let her go into that room. It's going to be toxic. But he never said it to me. Obviously, I'd already chatted to him. He seemed fine. And I remember just my whole sense of safety was just shattered. I was like, oh my God, like, what is this? And it's changed how I thought about the industry that moment. It's changed how you think about people who work with you, because you're like, oh, maybe they're thinking something else behind that. Is this who they really are? And it took a couple of years to really kind of get over that and lose some of that and just say, no, hey, that's them and I'm fine. But these sorts of things happen. There was another instance in a different company where I found out that several men had been promoted, even though they had a lot less experience. And I was like, what's going on? And I was talking to my managers, like, why? Why have they been promoted? What have they done that I have not done? And they were like, oh, well, and they couldn't come up with anything. So they said, okay, well, what can we give you to make you feel okay about this? Because we can't make you promoted right now, because there's not enough promotions to go around. What can we do? And I was like, look, I just want to be paid the same as everyone else for the work that I do. And I said that because naively, I thought it was already true. I got quite a substantial pay rise that week. So obviously it hadn't been true. And these things, they sort of eat away at you. But I think what I've learned over the course of my time is sort of a resilience. You have to be resilient. You have to have sort of inner strength that these things might happen. Obviously for us, the majority of these things are about being women, but that's, in any industry, there's so many other kinds of diversity, and there's so many other kinds of this sort of insidious behavior and bias that anyone can experience. And I think you do have to find that sort of resilience in yourself to be capable of dealing with these things. So I feel that at least that was something I was able to build in that time. So now, even if I am in a meeting room where I'm the only woman, it's like, no, it's going to represent. So I don't mind as much. But it's for sure, I think when I started, I was the only woman in a company of 90 people. So that was, being kind of the minority. It's been quite a familiar experience.
Fantastic. I think oh yeah, sorry. I'll speak to the microphone. So I guess I kind of want to ask a bit of a kind of reflective question now, looking back again, in terms of how things have changed and if you have seen positive change, and perhaps any really strong examples of times where companies have done something, perhaps internally, that's kind of had an effect on the culture, or you feel is the kind of thing that does have an effect on the culture that makes it perhaps more welcoming for women, and then also kind of ideas of things you'd like to see kind of moving forward as well, which could make sure that the gaming industry does continue to change and grow in the direction it needs to.
I think my point of view on this is going to be so different from your point of view, because I think the streaming world and career is really quite new. I know it's been around for years and years and years, but if you look at like the top 10 streamers on Twitch, they're all male. I'm not saying that women are crap at streaming. I just think it is just still a very, if you're a woman streaming, it's either because you're a booby streamer and you don't know what you're doing, and that's just an absolute terrible argument, or, if you are say for instance, you dress up to the neck and you're very skilled at your game, you are still considered a booby streamer, and it's, our opinions on this are going to be so completely different, but I do think the streaming world is so behind on this. We need to take so many more steps. I think that we really haven't done enough. And I think it's really only since last year that I started seeing a lot of women being used on adverts. And one thing I'm really disliking is that I see lots of women being used on International Women's Day, and then the rest of the year, we're back to the men again. And it's like, no wonder why people in the comments think that we're appealing to the masses, because you're only using us on one day of the year. So if we include women in gaming adverts from the streaming world across the whole year, then we won't be appealing to the masses. It will be the exact same as using a man in the adverts. It'll be completely normal. But I think the problem is that in a way we do create too much kind of mass kind of, let's all use women on International Women's Day, and then don't do it enough through the rest of the year that it backs up this bias and this stereotype. We need to break that, and we need to be, I'm not saying don't use men, but we need to make sure if we are doing advert, we need to have both, because the streaming world is so behind compared to obviously your guys' experiences.
Going back to equal representation and International Women's Day, because obviously that was the weekend just gone, and people are still doing things around that. It's also just really important that, so you say that our industry is quite progressive, but like the UK, UK, the trade board for the UK games industry, did a census, which is it was the first census they've done in the industry, and it was eye-opening. I think they did, I can't remember the exact figure, but I think it was like 14%, something like that.
On average. Yeah.
On average, that's women working in the UK games industry. So that's insane. In comparison to, again, don't quote me on this, but especially for mobile games, I think women make up like almost 50% of players. Yeah. So that's it's absolutely insane that more women who play games don't see games as a legitimate career. And I just, based on my experience through going through education and stuff, I didn't even realize that the games industry was a thing. I was like, oh yeah, games exist. I don't know how they're made, or I think it stems right down from just legitimizing all of these different routes for girls and saying that this is a career option, because I know from when I was at school, it was like you can become a teacher or a hairdresser, or it's just so many industries that you just don't see routes into. And I think that we could definitely be doing as an industry a lot more outreach into schools, because it's not that hard. You just open our doors, you go into schools and you say, we're here, this is who we are, and this is how you can be like us. And there are a lot of organisations that are working their way up to that. I know Liz Prince from Amaquist, she is doing this really cool initiative called G into Gaming, where she's working with a lot of really cool people, and that's coming up this year, where they're working on going into schools and working with parents as well, and trying to get parents to realise that you can make a lot of money in games. It's a cool industry, it's creative and it's techie, and it's the largest industry in the world. It makes so much money. I don't see why why people don't see, especially women, don't see it as a cool industry to work in.
So I think I can speak. I think I'm going to speak on 3 different levels. So I'm going to speak on as individuals, what we can do, as content creators. So what sort of games should we be making, and then companies. What should companies do? Because I think those are 3 different things. So firstly, I think individuals, we need to assess our own biases. I think this is something we can all get to know. We all have unconscious bias. There's things that we believe that we don't know we believe, and they affect our judgment. They affect our judgment all the time, from creative decisions we make about the content we make as game developers, the people we hire, the people we promote. These are things that affect our judgment. And we need to be honest with ourselves about what those are, and learn about them, and give ourselves tools to combat those. And I think we have to champion this industry and do outreach, and take the time to mentor, take the time to go to events, and build a community that is inclusive and welcoming, both at events and then also online. I think also to your point, we can all call out things which are happening, which we think are wrong. And it's hard to do. It's scary to do that. If you're online, it's scary to start saying no, that you can't say that. Don't say that. but we have to all individually do that. If we're playing games online, if we're on a stream and we see people doing things that we think are wrong, then we need to be brave enough to say you can't do that. Kick those people. You don't want to play with them anyway, right? So as individuals, that's what I think we can do to make our community stronger. And if we do that, then of course more people will come into the games industry. And then as content creators, we have to be better. We have to hold ourselves to a higher standard, to look at the content we're creating and saying, does this actually uphold this sort of bias, or this sort of old, are we going to create games which are not inclusive, which speak to a very narrow audience? Or are we going to try and make games that change that challenge what games can be, that challenge what sort of experiences that people can play? Are we going to just make what everyone's been making for years? And it's like, oh, look, there's another screaming angry man face. Brilliant. He's got beard, and he's brown-haired, and his shirt is a bit unbuttoned. Like, if you actually look at how many protagonists in games look like that, white, bearded, male, it's astonishing. Like, I've got example page of, I think there's about 20. And I didn't even look that hard, right? So we have to be better there. And then lastly, as the companies, so as an industry, what kind of sort of things we can do? Well, I'm lucky to work in a company that's taken this incredibly seriously. I think King has gotten, on average, I think we're approaching 40% women in the company. So I think we're at like 36, something like that, 37. And this year and last year, we've hit 40% intake. So we're trying to bring in more and more women. So that takes a lot of effort, particularly at recruitment. It means that your recruitment process takes a bit longer because you have to make sure your CVs are diverse. We check our recruitment panels are diverse. We make sure that we're checking for bias in all of our processes. We check for bias in every promotion run we do. Everything is cross-checked by a diverse group to see if there's any bias. So we don't promote anyone without it having just a quick check. And we'll always go, hey, did you know what about that? Is that person ready? What about that person? You haven't talked about her. She's an introvert or whatever. King also runs a lot of really amazing initiatives. So for instance, we have a GDC scholarship for women. So women who want to enter the games industry or in university, we give them they can apply and we'll send them to GDC so they can kind of kickstart. Because sometimes networking can be very difficult for women in games. We have paid internships that we open, and we make sure that that's also hired for diversely. So it's something we're taking really seriously. We have other initiatives. We have a Women in Games group in King, so that's a support network. We have a Women in Leadership organization to help train women. It's called Kicking Glass. It's just started. Funny. Anyway, so that's doing a lot of mentorship as well to make sure that when leadership opportunities are available, the women are ready and waiting, and they've got every skill possible, and we're going to make it so difficult not to promote. So I think these are sorts of things we can do, and I think that we're noticing, King is noticing the benefits of doing all those things. Does it mean we're at where we want to be? No. The targets have got even more aggressive. We have to hit 50-50 hiring this year, and we're on track, but it's challenging. And we're looking to find ways of bringing that diversity all the way up to the leadership group. So we have really good diversity in the junior and mid-level now because of all this sort of hiring. And we need to push that into the senior, mid-level, and leadership positions now. So I think, like, to this point, that it has dramatically changed even in the years I've been working here, and we can see that percolating out throughout the industry. It's not acceptable anymore to speak about gamers the way that we used to, speak about the industry the way that we used to. And I think there's still a long way to go, but we really have, I think, made significant change.
You guys are painting a picture of an industry that is really trying to change, but obviously it's this intersection of being predominantly kind of male-oriented and male-dominated within the workforce. And obviously, games as an art form kind of represent a broader part of the kind of spectrum of our culture. And I wondered how you see it fitting in with things like films, music and television, which are obviously seeing a move towards diversification now as well. And do you see games as being ahead of the curve on that, or slightly behind the times in terms of their representation within their content? And whether you think it's possible for, again, an art form that has been predominantly male consumed since its perception largely. Whether you think it's possible for it to kind of catch up, or whether it will be a matter of kind of more long-term slow progress.
My opinion is going to be different again from yours because I've got tunnel vision. I only see really into the games that I play, nothing behind the scenes. But I think in terms of diversity between having a male-orientated industry, so say for instance I'm talking about whether you play a game and you don't have a choice to be male or female. I think personally we've taken a really big step in this, in where we're able to play female characters in games and they're not overly sexualized like Lara Croft and her massive boobies. Like, it's not like that anymore, thank God. So you can play, you know, RPGs, you know, Skyrim, Oblivion, Elder Scrolls Online, Last of Us is a really good example. I love that game so much. And, you know, these were games where you could play a female and they weren't overly sexualized and you could change exactly how you wanted to look. And it didn't change a thing about the story at all. And you didn't feel like, oh, this bit was made for a man. You know, you never felt like that. You played and it was like, it's for me. And you know, it made you feel really good. I think, obviously, I only can really form an opinion on the games that I've played and the games that I have played. I do think that we are maybe further forward compared to other industries. When you look at music in particular and you look at music videos, they are really very sexualized, and the dancers, and that's, you know, they could do what they want, it's very sexy, but in terms, there isn't really that large spectrum like we have in video games. You don't see really many artists really taking it to the other side, apart from Billie Eilish, for example. She is really different compared to the norm. And movies the same. When you look at say Wonder Woman, and when you look at stuff like that, Captain Marvel, that was really good. But then when you look on the other side of things, like Catwoman, latex skin tight suit, and she's got the best body you've ever seen, it makes you think, oh, what am I doing wrong? What do I need to eat? So, you know, it's I'd say games have definitely taken a bigger step compared to the other industries. I think the industries are really stuck in their shell and are afraid to break out, but games have definitely said, hey, there's, you know, we all look very different and it's time that we accept that and, you know, move on.
Yeah, I agree with my very limited knowledge of being in the industry. But I think it just comes down to, again, just making sure that you've got the representation of the creators, because it's all very well saying, oh yeah, let's have more diversity in games, but unless you're actually bringing in the diversity into your studio, it kind of feels a bit meaningless and doesn't really feel like you're really supporting the fact that you actually want to make like heartfelt, deep, meaningful, diverse games in this like industry, which has like loads of freedom. There's like anyone can make a game in their room. Like, there's all these amazing tools and stuff that you can do, and you can make it for free. Like, it's cool, and we just need to be making sure that we're supporting and making sure it's accessible for everyone to be able to join a game studio, and we've got that equal representation with content creators, rather than just saying, yeah, let's have more diverse content. I think it needs to go deeper than that.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think there's we need to be sensitive. We need to be culturally and sensitive with all the content we're creating, because obviously we're all individually from one particular culture or society or background, and we're trying to express, as an artist, I'm trying to express different differences all the time. And if you don't have a diverse team, if you don't have access to a diverse set of people, it's very hard to do that with any degree of authenticity and respect for that person's background. So in terms of gender, if your studio is full of men, it's going to be more challenging for you to represent the female experience in a way that's sensitive. And this is true. And this is like true for me. It's more difficult for me to represent someone from a very different cultural or socioeconomic background than me, or a different sexuality or different whatever than I am, if I haven't been able to do those cultural checks. So we have two systems in work that we use to do these, sort of check these things. The first thing is we look at the whole, if you're doing an RPG, it's a lot easier. Maybe you can You can offer choices, and I would really recommend if you are building an RPG not to label those male or female, but just allow people to choose their body type that they want. Because, of course, we've been talking about gender in a binary sense, and if that's not the case. So allow people to pick the body type they want, the clothing and facial details that they want. They can decide what their character looks like, and who are we to say whether that's male or female. I think that's redundant. When it comes to developing a cast of characters or a cast of people that are in your game, what we like to do is check against the norm. So we've actually developing a tool along with some partners, and they're going to kill me if I get this wrong, but I think it's with MIT. If I get that wrong, everyone's going to be really mad. But anyway, don't quote me on that. And it's a diversity tool where you can actually input all your characteristics of each character that you've developed and what they do in the game. And then it will check it against all different kinds of diversity. Because again, gender is just one, so it will check against sexuality and whether that character is able-bodied or not, whether they're overweight or underweight, tall, short, etc. Like all of these sorts of things, cultural background and so on. And then they'll give you a kind of a rating about how diverse your character is and how diverse your game is. Because it's, again, like there's no point in filling your game full of stereotypes to tick some sort of like diversity box if you haven't really challenged yourself to think more deeply about that. So, a typical example, okay, if let's say we're doing a medieval game and you're like, oh, well, the girl is going to be the sniper. Or she's going to go bow and arrow. And then there's a troll man, a big, heavy man, and he's going to have the axe. And then there's a dwarf, and he's going to be really fiery. And you have these stereotypes, and that's a relatively innocuous example, but we'll do this all the time, and it becomes incredibly problematic, where you're saying, well, which is why I really liked Overwatch, because I think they did challenge some of those stereotypes. So we have the, I forgot all their names, I'm terrible with names, but you have like buff women, you have skinny women, you have like busty women. It's like, as long as you have lots of them, you can have whichever one you want. And they kind of, it's like, let's have the variety, None of us, I think, are going to say there can be no sexy women. And it's about making sure that the amount of representation is diverse, that there's equal opportunity sexiness. You can have sexy men in there too. It's completely fine, But it's about making sure that when you're developing your characters, you're developing your story, that you think sensitively about the cultures and identities you're representing, and make sure that you check. We have a team who do this, a globalization and cultural sensitivity team. But if you don't have access to that, if you're not lucky enough to work in a company that has access to that, we're a very open community. Reach out to people, be prepared. You maybe show your stuff on Twitter, going like, hey, anyone want to give me some feedback on this? It's something I don't know about. Allow people the choice, like you were saying, and make sure that if you do allow choice, that you try and not bound it by any sort of labels. And then if you're developing a bunch of characters, that those characters are diverse. As to whether the games industry is better at this than others, I think we're either equally great or equally bad, depending on what lens you take on it. If you look at the whole games industry, from mobile games through to indie games, through to AAA and AA and all of these, then I think you could say, oh, well, there's a game about everything. But if you're looking at the games which have massive market share, if you're looking at games which are advertised heavily, if you're looking at AAA, I think we still have some way to go, in the same way that if you look at Hollywood, we still have some way to go.
Fantastic. Another thing I wanted to ask that I think could be quite valuable to kind of bring into the conversation is a bit on kind of any experiences you've had with intersectionality, kind of representing people that lie at the intersection of different kind of minority groups, whether you feel they're represented kind of front-facing in gaming, and whether you feel there's a space for them within the industry in terms of employment. And again, any thoughts you have on that more broadly as well.
I'm probably going to skip this question just because I don't really know what that means, and I don't want to make a misinformed opinion about it. So rather than me just talking absolute, I'm just going to pass it on.
I think absolutely there's a space for everyone in the industry, as cheesy as that sounds, but it's such a accessible art form, so it should be, the industry should be as accessible for the people who also want to create it too. That saying, I don't necessarily think we're there yet in being able to support all of these people and within the studios, because I just don't think that there's a lot of I think we could be more educated on it. I think especially coming from someone who manages people and such, it's something that I definitely need to learn more and train more, and I think we can all be doing that within our studios as well. I think that our adverts and job descriptions and stuff can also be quite binary in terms of whether it's just male, female, but I think we need to just be better, and don't really have an answer to it, but I am willing to learn. And I think as an industry, especially the UK games industry, we're always leaning on each other, and I think we can definitely be more of a community in that learning. That's not really an answer, but sorry.
It's a really difficult topic. I mean, I'm sitting here as a cisgendered, straight, white, privileged, middle-class woman, right? So yes, when we're talking about intersectionality, I think we all have to recognize that there's, even within sort of gender, we've like inherited privilege, and it is easier for some than others. And I think that's where having support groups really matter, and recognizing that inequality, that people who are non-binary, people who are trans, people who come from socioeconomic backgrounds which are disadvantaged and are also women or are also gay, or these are things that give this sort of part of this intersectionality challenge. We just have to be better. We have to take steps of how we can be more welcoming, and this is kind of where I think a lot of that bias has to be addressed, and where we make these assumptions. Oh, we have, for instance, we have a women in games panel, which is a great thing to do. Maybe we could have, like in some of the places I go, they call women with an X instead of an E, to kind of give the sense of that intersectionality about it. So we even had a lot of discussions in work about whether or not we should even call our Women in King group Women in King anymore, right? To make sure we're as inclusive as possible. But it's an incredibly challenging topic, and we can only do the best we can and try and make sure we're supporting people, recognizing that everyone has different challenges, everyone has different privileges and disadvantages, and we have to try and mitigate against all of those things. So I think, again, we're making strides here, but I think it's, if you start looking at female characters, and then you start looking at female characters of color or female characters of color who are gay, and then you will see fewer examples of these things. And I think this is where some of those challenges come through, and again, we have to be better as creators as well, to represent the complexity of the kinds of experiences that people have. I'm not sure if that really answered your question.
Thank you very much to our speakers. We're going to open it up to the floor now for anyone who has any questions. But should we have a round of applause for our speakers before we do that? Yeah, so anyone, stick up your hand. Sorry, I should have done that earlier. Sorry. Sorry, are you going to? Yeah, okay, fantastic. Sorry. Maybe it would be better for whoever's answering to say the question, because otherwise we're going to be running up and down. Yeah. I think we just.
We can repeat the question.
Yeah, I think that's probably the best way to do it. Yeah. So, I thought you were going to bring the mic up. Okay, never mind. It's all right. Don't worry. Yeah, would you?
So you've been talking about the moment when you're accepting people into the gaming industry, and then after that, especially when I'm looking for jobs now, and quite a lot of my friends, it is very interesting question also how later on work-life balance, maternity leaves, and everything like that. How is it in the games industry? Is it like a good workplace for women?
Okay, so question is, what's it like working as a woman in the industry in terms of like benefits and work-life balance. I can only speak from my experience, and I've worked with two very lovely companies in that they definitely do put their employees first. I know you do hear a lot about crunch and other horror stories relating to that, but my experience within the UK games industry, again, speaking from my experience, is that people are definitely being put at the forefront, and they're realizing that unless you invest time and money and benefits into these people, you're not going to be able to keep them because other companies are offering a nicer place to work. So I think it's really great to see, especially larger companies like King, like paving the way forward for company culture, because then it means smaller companies like Big Pixel, we have to, in order to keep these great people, we have to compete. So we, I think winning our best place to work will kind of says a lot about our workplace. We don't do crunch. We've got set work hours. We pay lunch. We've got great benefits package. That includes maternity leave and shared parental leave, adoption leave. There's lots of different ways in which we try and support our people, because ultimately we realise that healthy people make great games and unhealthy people, not that, that's going to come out wrong, I'm not going to finish that sentence. I just, yeah, happy, healthy people make great games, and that's what we should be saying. That should be the standard of the industry.
Yeah, like I said, my experience in the games industry, and again, this is really hard because my experience, I've been working in all these companies which put work-life balance ahead. So I think that when a lot of these mobile games companies started, it was one of the ways they attracted people from AAA was by saying, okay, well, we don't do crunch. So again, I have never crunched, ever, in 10 years, 11 years of games. It's not part of our culture. We don't do it. So, you know, so in terms of work-life balance, that's something that we take really, really seriously. In my office, if I see someone working late, I will go over and go, hey, is everything okay? Did you have enough time to finish that? Should we push the deadline? You know, I don't want them working late. It's wrong. Like, it's just not, you don't get paid extra for that. It's not accepted in my company. If you really want to put a bit of polish on something, I'll have to be like, okay, fine. But take some time off tomorrow. But yeah, we don't do it. And so I think that's, my advice is choose your company wisely. Take a time to reach out to people working there, ask questions about their culture, double check, see, like, is crunch normal? Is this something they do? And you'll learn which ones have that culture and which ones don't. As to maternity leave, it's something we take very, very seriously, parental leave as well. I think maybe this is partly because it's a Swedish company originally where they take these things really seriously. So I don't know the exact figures, and I'm not going to say it because I don't want to get it wrong, but it's much more generous than the state allocated maternity leave. We do things like work from home. We have flexible working hours. You know, we really try and make it comfortable for people who have a family to work with us. We have a breastfeeding room, so dedicated for people who might be breastfeeding, things like that. So I think it's a really great question, and all I can say is take the time to research, and particularly if you can, reach out to perhaps women who've worked there in the past and try and get that sort of honest, say, hey, is it really we'd like to work there? Because there's been like companies I decided not to work for because when I talked to people, they were like, and I went, okay, yeah, not for me.
Hi. First of all, thank you very much for all of you. I really feel valued in this last hour as a woman. And I wanted to ask you, do you use neurological articles in order to develop a game?
Neurological articles? So the question is, do we use neurological articles in the creation of our games? I'm not sure how to answer. Okay. Yes and no, I think is the answer to that. We do a lot of studies and psychological assessments of our games. Again, King is very lucky. It has a lot of resources to be able to do this sort of work. Not every company has that sorts of resources. So we have player insights who do market analysis. We have player research team who really digs into how players are thinking and feeling. We do a lot of qualitative data and quantitative data, and I think we also sometimes team up with research groups to do more in-depth studies. It's a lot of it's we also use a lot of the studies that have been done before, kind of looking at the Bartlett player type theories and sort of all sorts of different player type theories. So we have people doing research and collecting research for us to use in the development of our games. So it's something we take quite seriously as well. Of course, with any game, you have to think, especially with free-to-play games, you have to think very sensitively about how we're building our games and whether those games are safe and whether they're like welcoming environments that allow players to play in a way that's comfortable and isn't damaging in any way. So this is something we also take very seriously, and we're very careful with how we create our games. So it's think in those sort of psychological way, we're trying to make sure it's safe, that we're not using any dark patterns in how we develop our games to try and encourage people to play in a way that's negative. But I can't say that we have done, not to my knowledge, have we done any like really in-depth psychoanalysis and neurological analysis of our games. It sounds like a really interesting topic. Feel free to reach out and see if you guys want to do a study, because that's the sort of thing I think you would be really interested in.
I don't have an answer to that question.
Anyway. But I mean, long story short, like the more analysis we can do about why we play games, what it gives to us, what the sort of, and in specificity, like how does any individual one thing we put in our game, how does that affect the player? We're very player centric, so how we're thinking about everything we add to the game, or how that will affect them on an emotional level, and then sort of building towards an experience that's giving them the right sort of feelings is really important to us. So any more information we would have about that is, give me more. I love it. Just keep, yeah. So we do make sure to do the research properly. Yeah. Do a lot of UI tests as well and user experience tests.
So yeah, this question was basically the work-life balance and how it works when you're streaming and you're self-employed, have to do everything yourself. And basically, if you want to have a life, you don't earn money. So if you want to go on holiday, you're going to lose money. You lose. The one really important thing with streaming is, I can't think of this word, I'm having a complete brain fart. Consistency. So if you don't have a schedule and you don't stream back-to-back days, you lose money, you lose flow of viewership, you lose flow of subs, bit revenue, donation, everything takes an impact. Having a kid, out of the question. Like, unless you've got a really supportive network where someone can babysit during the day, every day. I know somebody, I'm really good friends with her, she is a streamer, she's just had a kid, and she's doing it really well. I think her partner's hours with his work are flexible so that he babysits while she streams during the day. I think that's probably the easiest way you'd be able to do it. But in terms of that, streaming is really restrictive to that sense. If I want to go on holiday, it's, well, I'm going to lose loads of money. It's like, you're going to have to accept that it's going to take a blow on absolutely everything, unless you've got say for instance a following on YouTube. So if you're doing both streaming and YouTube, which is quite a difficult life to balance, because you've got to record, edit, obviously do tags on YouTube, then you've got to advertise your content on social medias. It's, unless you've got content piled up ready to upload whilst you're away, really you're not going to be earning any revenue on any platform at all. And that is, I'm going on holiday for quite a long time in June and July, so that is something that I'm now months and months and months before I'm starting to make content ready, so I don't lose so much money, because it's just, we don't get paid holiday, we don't get paid sick pay, we don't get maternity leave. There is absolutely nothing no healthcare. We are all on our own, and it's as simple as if you don't stream, you don't earn. So it's just black and white, and I'm envious. And every time I talk to people from the gaming industry that don't do streaming, I'm like, God damn it, why did I want to be in front of a camera? Like, why did I have to do this? But yeah, it's really black and white, and I don't think there's a way around it unless, there is a way around it. If you have a sponsor that gives you a monthly pay, you don't have to worry too much, and that's brilliant. And I've had that before, and that is something that I'll definitely be working on this year because, never mind, doesn't matter what subs I'm earning because I've still got this continuous flow of income every month from this sponsorship. And no matter where you are, you can always advertise the company on Twitter, Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook. It will always work, and that's one good thing that does come with stream is if you work really hard and you have loads of contacts, you have your fingers in everybody's pies, you can get yourself a really good sponsorship that has a monthly wage that will usually always be more than your streaming income. I hope that covers it.
Yeah, you.
So I guess, what is your favourite example of a game or character in a game that promotes diversity in women and stuff, and why is that so?
I'm going to start this one off. League of Legends probably, I think, is really good of diversity of women. I've only really started playing League for about over a year now, and I watch it eSports side, but I really like how in League there is a really broad variety of women. So I'm not even going to bother to pronounce their names because I'm awful at names. But there is, women in there that are really butch, strong, and you're like, oh, and you don't want to go up against them because it will make you cry, and you don't want to do it, and she throws tentacles at you. And then you've got someone like Sona, who's really feminine, and she plays this lovely musical notes. She's kind of pointless, but, and then you've got Katarina, red hair, really sexy. And then you've got Jinx, who is like the other end of the spectrum. She doesn't have great whoppers, but she's her own badass in a way. And I think League does that really nicely, and having a real broad, in terms of different cultures, ethnicity, different kind of, some people do look butcher than others, more feminine, more sexual. I think they do it really nicely, and with the men too. They've tried to make men really sexy and appeal to women, and each time I've been like, ugh, no. So they obviously need more women in their company, because every time they've released a male character, such as Set, okay, no, it's just not there. They need more women in their industry.
I want to say like Animal Crossing because I never really felt like, again, coming from me being a white cis woman, I never really felt like gender really mattered in Animal Crossing, and everyone's kind of different, and like sometimes you can't even tell what the little this duck's gender is, and it's just like you can just go around being whoever you want to be, and if you want to pick up weeds, it's fine. And it felt like that they'd almost kind of removed it from the game, so it didn't really matter, and it was just all really cute. That's, as you can tell, my kind of game.
Yeah, I think there's so many interesting examples. I was thinking about Night in the Woods, which has amazing characters. They are cats mostly, but she is a female cat. And I thought there's also quite a lot of discussion in that game about depression and neurodiversity, which I found quite good. So that was really nice. And The Last of Us, I think, is a really good example. And I'm really looking forward to Last of Us 2, which I think will also have a really shine a light on kind of intersectionality again of female characters and experience. And I actually really liked how they showed her journey in the first game, because you didn't get to play with her that much, but she was strong in a way that felt very natural. And you could see her growing and developing throughout the game, so I thought that was really good. I'm trying to think. I played Assassin's Creed Odyssey as Cassandra, and I thought she was pretty badass. Quite enjoyed that. It was like finally we actually play an Assassin's Creed game with a female character, and she's in sort of a secondary or an apologetic, because she was like main character. Nearly everyone I knew played with her was like, yeah, she was so much better than the other guy. And I was like, she really was. She was great. But she was great. I'm trying to think of the other examples. I think Life is Strange is really great. I think, especially if you take a look into the independent, you can see an awful lot of really interesting stories being told about. So many. I can't list them all. They're great. Try and think of more, but yeah. It's a good question though.
Thanks for coming again. And I think earlier there was a point brought up about how it's really great that during this time of year, during Women's History Month, that it is brought up a lot that, women are featured prominently in all sorts of media. But it was also mentioned that outside of this time, it feels like it's not brought up at all. It's a bit of a tokenism statement. Judging from what you guys have said, there seems to be a lot of efforts within the industry to try address this. But what can we do as consumers or as viewers of your content?
So I think, speaking, if we're talking consumers in the streaming world, so if we're talking, we're going to support a peripheral company like that, who's done work before with women. I'd say, for instance, if there was an advert and they've used, say, for instance, 4 eSports males to advertise a headset, I'd say as a consumer to be like, I know that it's quite uncommon, but there are women eSports team out there. It's obviously not as prominent as male esports team, like say for instance League, CSGO in particular. There was one women's esports team, and for some reason it's got shunned out and laughed at, and that was really like, why did this happen? There was obviously, I think it was Hearthstone, the woman that won it, and that was amazing. And finally everyone was like, hang on a second, what's this? This doesn't happen. Women don't win. And that was really strange, because even I was like, hang on a second, this doesn't happen. What's happening here? So I think as a consumer, I only really want to support companies that I can see are making a real effort in trying to make a difference in the industry. And I'm not saying this because I'm biased or anything, but say, for instance, Logitech. Instead of being like, oh, our advert got loads of hate from all these people, women and men. Yes, there were women too that were saying, women have loads of power, why do they need more? Like, come on. But, I'd say, okay, I'm going to support Logitech because they've done more content considering the backlash that it had, rather than, I don't want to put any company on blast, that would be really bad, but say another company that has for the past 2 years only used a women twice. We're out there. It takes more than, 5 minutes to look on Twitter and look, you found us. It's not exactly needle in the haystack. We're everywhere. And I think as a consumer, it would be voicing your opinions and saying, yo, thanks for doing this. This was really cool. This was quite refreshing. Being really vocal on social media makes a really big difference, because there's people in each company, that's exactly their job, to go on social media and see what everyone's saying. So as a consumer, be really vocal, what you're happy about. Obviously, don't be hateful. That's really unacceptable and unnecessary. But, constructive criticism where it's needed, but be really vocal about what you're happy about. It's so important. As soon as you like something, say, hey, I like this, even if it comes across as simp. Like, what is this stupid word that's come out?
Yeah, I think just revoicing that, consumers have basically all of the power. We can't make games without you guys downloading it and buying the games and stuff. So it's just being more mindful and in what you're downloading, what you're buying, making sure that what games you're purchasing align with what you want to see in the industry. So if you're going to continue buying games that predominantly feature white cis men looking rugged with their shirts done up, then they're going to keep making games like that. Whereas if you support more games that represent the world that you want to see, then it forces the industry to be more thoughtful of their content.
Yeah. I don't think I have much more to add other than make sure that if you're online, that you're supportive of people, welcoming. I think you've just lost a game and you're like, oh, but we're like, good game, everyone. Yay! I lost so badly. But I think, and I think also just making sure that is just unacceptable. I said it earlier, but the games community and the industry is made up of us as consumers and the developers, and the online presence of so many of these things are so poisonous. Like, I know there's many games I decided not to play because I disliked the community, and that's on us. It's our community. We're the ones who build that. So we have to change it. We have to make sure that the way we treat others is the way we want to be treated, and we actually take this really seriously and make sure that the companies take it really seriously. And if they're not taking it seriously, then don't buy the products. Don't engage, because that's the most powerful thing as consumers that we can do, and be vocal about it. So, great question, though.
So yeah, there's one more over here, and then that'll be all.
So to follow up on what Gina said, that she didn't realize that career in games was even an option. When looking back at my high school days, well, so long ago, there were some women in tech for these 15, 16-year-old people, but by then they just, for one reason or another, didn't seem to be interested. And it feels like there isn't anything pretty much done for kids at younger age. So if you think, what do you think could be done to like show younger kids that this is an option, you can also be this, and it's really cool?
So to repeat the question, this is the point that Gina talked about, making sure that we were doing outreach and making sure that women saw this as a viable opportunity, particularly at school. But the point was that, you know, by the time you're 15 or 16, many people have already made choices or had a vision of the industry that means they don't take on these roles. So what can we do for a younger age group to give them? Is that correct? Or am I repeating it correct? Right. You want to go first?
Yeah, so there are some really cool things going on. I know definitely in the UK. Kids, they've got basic dev kits now that are going into schools, which is really cool. It's teaching basic code. I'm not too sure if that means that the children are understanding, if that means that they can then be taught like that coding isn't a viable option. But I also think it's not just about in the schools. We also need to be educating like the parents as well, because parents shape so much of what you do and where you go. And I know that the games industry gets quite a lot of negative press, especially with it being like I can't think of the word, but it's now like an addiction, right? Yeah. It gets a lot of negative press about, oh, you're not going outside, you're playing games, you're stuck in your room, you're playing games. And I think we just need to be educating parents more about different industries and kind of that games aren't all bad. Like, it's just a few get negative press, and then that suddenly spirals out of control. But like a lot of things in this world. And I just think that I think we are making steps into, from what I can see, like these dev kits and like Raspberry Pis and stuff. They're a lot more accessible. People can like code them. I'm not a coder, but I just, as you can tell. But it's getting there. But I think it needs to be a bit more meaningful, and there needs to be kind of a, you're doing this because we're teaching you about this, because the world is gonna, the job roles are changing. Like, careers aren't police officers, and I mean they're really cool, but like there's a whole new landscape for careers now, and I think career routes need to be taught better in schools.
So to go on this, I am 21, so I really only left school. Sorry everyone. I only left school, 6-7 years ago. That maths is wrong. Go with it. When I was in school and I told my teachers what I wanted to do, they told me I was going to fail, and basically, you're not going to earn any money. That's a lie. And, it was just completely shunned out question. And, when my teacher said, oh, why didn't you do your homework? Well, because I was playing Skyrim, that was why. And, and they would always say, you're not going to get anywhere in life playing video games. And that was just always how it was. And I think one thing I'm liking to see now is one of my managers is doing it. He's going into schools and with the new sports team, and he's saying, hey guys, if you're good at video games, you can get paid. And this is really good because a lot of the time there is so much talent in the UK in terms of esports that is shunned out by their parents because parents think that there isn't a career there. And, you know, there is. And this can be such a good, you know, money maker, I guess, you know. And there is just talent that is being locked away in boxes because there's such a bad press with gaming that it's an addiction. Like, oh, just what? You know, well, it's a great addiction and you can earn money from it if that's the case. So I think having these talks in schools, bringing in esports team, bringing in game development companies, bringing in all these different things, educating parents so they don't think their kid's going to get an addiction and die, and, you know, saying, hey, there's a lot of money in this industry, and if you love playing video games, it's for you, you know, and you shouldn't have to not do it because of uneducated people, basically. We need more education, so much more education on it.
Yeah, there's some really exciting initiatives as well. So a friend of mine was working with Girls Make Games and some other initiatives where they get quite young girls in and teach them how to code, teach them how to build games over the weekend. And it was incredible. They get so much joy out of it. They're like, these are the games we made. So I think there's some of that we can do. I think, to your point, we can educate everyone, not just about games and the choice, but about the kinds of roles that are available. So many people even come out of university not actually understanding what kind of roles are available. You know, I get lots of young people saying, oh, but you need to be good at physics and maths. And I was like, oh, there are roles for people who are good at physics and maths, but there's also roles for people who aren't, and they think a game designer is an artist or a coder, and they get them all confused, and no one really understands this. I think as an industry, we can also be much more open about how games are made, and who does what, and what those roles look like, and what the myriad of paths are to get to those jobs. You don't have to go to university to study computer science to become a gamer, or even go to university to do a games degree to work in games. There's so many different ways of doing that. So I think it's also the complexity, because this example, like streaming is a games job, esports is a games job, coding is a games job, but art is a games job, and office management is a games job. There's so many amazing roles. If you're passionate about games, you want to get into them. It should be open to everyone. It kind of astonishes me sometimes that people still think it's, you know, a bunch of pimply people locked in a basement somewhere. Like in their mom's basement, like, yeah. You know, like those times are long gone. I saw this is one more question, is it?
Yeah, because I was just wondering, because you guys are in creative operational roles, do you also see like a lot of female representation in precisely coding and like developing code?
I come at this from a recruitment perspective, and no, it's really hard. We don't get a lot of, especially women or those who identify as women, coming as coders. They are there. There's just not a lot of them, yeah. And it's really difficult to, when you're trying to hire a diverse team, to have a diverse coding team, because it's definitely, I feel like, the trickiest area to hire diversely. And especially back-end development. Yeah, if you want to make money, go and be a back-end. Specialize in back-end development. That's what I'm going to tell Gina as a 4-year-old. And then, if you are a coder, a female coder in the industry, then everyone wants you. So it's really hard to keep them as well. So I guess just the answer is just to what we're talking about is just making sure that women know that you can do it. It is a viable option, and it is cool, and it shouldn't just be a role that you see men doing, and women are equally as good as men.
So again, in the companies I've worked for, female coders are obviously the fewer than in other, particularly in design and art tends to be quite well represented, and data science is also quite well represented for women for some reason. I don't know why. Speak to society on why there's so many female data scientists, I don't know. But we do struggle to find female coders. But again, to Genius Month, there's loads of them still. Like when I say we struggle, we just don't get as many as in our other areas. And we have senior female developers and mid-level and junior. What we're really struggling to find are those leadership roles. That's where the pool gets really small. So trying to find sort of principal level engineers who are female, studio engineer directors, studio development directors, that's really challenging. But I think all our industry has to hold ourselves a little bit accountable and make sure we leave those roles open long enough that at least we can attract and we headhunt. But for some reason, particularly very senior female engineering staff have often left the industry by the time we're coming around to recruitment. So if they've been in the industry for 10 or 15 years, many of them have gone to Amazon or Facebook or Google, and part of that, and I don't want to speak for every company, but it's really hard for games to compete with the wages that those companies are offering. So that's, I think, one of our major challenges, that some of those roles are, again, if you want to earn lots of money, going coding is so good. But yeah, some of those roles in like say Facebook or Google or Amazon or so the big tech companies, they really have competitive salaries, shall we say. But yeah, it's a great question.
Brilliant. Well, again, thanks to our panelists for coming along. And yeah, we've got some food over here for afterwards. We'll do a little networking and stuff, I think. But yeah, let's have another round of applause.
And thank you all for coming and giving up your evening to hang out with us. It's really cool. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Good job.
Thanks. That was really good. I love meeting people from the games industry that aren't in streaming, because